I think I don't even need the mic. My pleasure to be back in Vijayawada branch. Huh? Then I'll use it. I'll use it. Back in Vijayawada branch after I think few years at least. Definitely, I did not come back before. I think from 19. And Nagavalli was the chairperson. I think I joined for CA Day celebrations. Yeah. Afterwards, I didn't come back. So it's my pleasure to get a call from your at least three members of the committee. And I felt I should be here to just have your warmth and affection. And thank you very much, the entire team, for inviting me to be with you to speak on a subject which may not be to the interest of many people. But still, you have to listen and understand the subject because it has so much of impact on your professional career. I know, I'm sure, none of you had ever received any notice from the disciplinary committee. And if anyone has received, they would only feel that impact. So that is why one should listen to this subject and keep in their memory on what happens if you violate any of the code. So therefore, I feel very happy to be with you, just to meet all of you and recollect all my memories of 18 years long association with the profession and in the best times of Vijayawada branch, because this building was constructed and inaugurated during my tenure in the Central Council. Though the then committee did not use much of my services, but definitely I was there both at the time of inauguration, and also Vijayawada stood with me in all my 6 elections and giving me, if I understand rightly, the best majority when compared to my other contestants. So I am grateful to one and all for the excellent support that you have given me in my all 6 elections. And because I cannot forget the kind of warmth and affection that every one of you have shown. Those who are not here also, I'm sure a message will go to them. So with a lot of this thing interest, you must have heard the ICDS provisions and implementation of the same. In fact, when I was in the council, this subject was in discussion in the CBDT when ICDS was being formulated. I was sent from our institute direct access committee as a representative of the institute to participate in the principles of the ICDS and how to structure them, how to put it compliance, etc. And at the end of the session, I raised a point to the CBDT officials on who will monitor the implementation of the ICDS in the format given by the assessees. Then they straight away raised my finger against me, saying that you are there to comply that the SSE has followed the ICDS, and wherever there are deviations, you are expected to comment the same on in your tax audit report. This is how I remember the ICDS coming into force. And I'm sure because I don't sign many tax audit reports, so therefore I'm not very familiar with the implementation of these ICDS standards and how it is getting affected in our profession. But I'm sure all of you are following these ICDS strictly because they're mandatory. And particularly when an assessee is not complying, it's your duty to report that the ICDS is not complied. So therefore, you need to understand that first and then ensure that the assessee is complying. Otherwise, if someone is not complying based on certain interpretation, etc., and if that interpretation is not to your acceptable level, then you need to qualify that in your report at the appropriate place. Because as we go forward, we will see that even non-compliance with ICDS and your silence on reporting also would amount to negligence on your part. So therefore, even ICDS is a very important subject, and particularly for non-corporate, non-metros. I don't say Vijayawada is not a metro city, but definitely more of a tax practice. You should be very careful about compliance with ICDS. May not be applicable for many of the non-corporate assessees, but definitely it is applicable, and one may get one or two standards applicable. So be careful in that. Now, coming back to our subject, because this subject needs at least a 3 hours discussion. So I asked the organizers how much time I can speak. They said whatever time you want, or till whatever time the members sit through. So, so I leave it to you. As and when you feel that it is enough, then I'll stop it there. But definitely I'll rush through because there are more than 100 slides, which may not be of much importance for many of you, because there are some initial slides about the importance of code of ethics, etc. I will try to speed up the some of the not much important slides, but we'll spend some time on sharing some of the live cases of disciplinary cases so that it may be interesting to you. Just give me at least an hour's time to run through these slides, and then we can spend another half an hour to 45 minutes on some of the cases, because I have it's not that I'm boasting myself. I have a rich experience of spending 5 years in the disciplinary committee when I was in the council for 9 years, and thereafter another 3 years in the appellate authority of the institute disciplinary. So I have come across many big and very small, tiny cases also. So therefore, it's my pleasure to share some of them, though I will not share the names of the people, but definitely the facts you can understand and see how sometimes we are getting wrongly caught also. So, what is the code of ethics and why the code of ethics at all? Actually, today we are all here and we enjoy certain reputation in our society, mainly because of our qualification and backed by the strict code of ethics that is followed and implemented by the institute. Otherwise, see, we may not enjoy the same kind of a reputation what we are enjoying today, because it is, though it is a self-discipline. Now, of course, bigger corporates are taken over by NAFRA. Otherwise, what we are today is because of our strict code of ethics and the qualification that we enjoy. Lower level. Yeah. Criminal courts and other civil courts are taken took away, and some people are getting arrested also. That is I'll come to you. I'll definitely answer you. Just we'll go through all your questions to them. Just let me just rush through these slides. Yeah, yeah, sure. It is there. It is there. I disagree with you. It is this. But we are charged criminal law. That is where we are getting arrested. Right. Our professional negligence, our code of ethics is still in force, and we are right. Yeah. That is so. What is the code? I mean, why it is not called like any other standard or guidance note, etc.? Why is it called a code? It's nothing but a set of principles and standards which regulate our relationship with the co-members, and employees, employers, general public, etc. That is called a code of ethics, not like a standard or anything. Then coming back to the history of our code of ethics, it was first published in 1963 when the institute came into force in 1949. It was first published in 1963, and since then it has been revised so far 12 times from 63 to 2023 in the last 60 years. On average, if you take every 5 years, we have been revising this code. And the last revision that came in place is 2019-20, where it has been enlarged with a thorough revision. And the 11th edition, which was published again in 2009, I was also there in the council. For the first time, we have aligned our code with the International Ethical Standards Board, where we have lined up our code along with the international thing. That time, it was containing two parts, Part A, Part B. And Part A was dealing with the ISBA code, and Part B was our domestic laws. Now there have been so many changes from 2009, including some of the main acts have been amended with the company law, etc. There have been so many changes, and ISCBA also changed its code of ethics in 2018, thoroughly revised. Therefore, to cover up or to include all those changes, we have also revised this code. Some of the very important changes in the 2019 code are responding to non-compliance of laws and regulations. It is called NOCLAR, which has been deferred for some time during the COVID and made it effective from 1/10/2022. And so it is there, but it is applicable only for the listed entities for the time being, both in service members as well as for practicing members. So it may not be applicable for most of you at this point of time. And disclosure is required for 2 consecutive years if the fee of audit fee of your total is paid by one client with more than 40% of the total fee. That is public interest entities, it is only 20%. And another thing that is also effective from 1/10/2022, exemption for audit of government, etc. Those companies are exempted from this limit. And further providing restrictions on taxation and management services have made it effective from 1/10/2022. Independence requirements for audit and review engagements. These things have been identified, which we will see in the next slides when we go for. And the certain new concepts have been brought into the code, which is nothing but key audit partner. Effectively, it is called, this is the word borrowed from the IESBA, but we are now brought it into our code. So this is nothing but actually the person who is signing the report or who is leading the team, and in all practical purposes. In a nutshell, just that is the key audit partner, the concept of the key audit partner. And the public interest entity, this is also a new concept which has been brought into the code, where you will hear about these concepts during the course of the code. That is a listed entity or an entity which has been defined by the public law, etc., which is basically a listed entity. And for the purpose of this definition, it may be noted that banks and insurance companies are also considered as public interest entities, because most of the insurance companies, I think all insurance companies, are not listed entities. Therefore, they brought them also under the public interest entities. Other entities might also be considered by the firms to be public interest entities. And the professional accountant, instead of calling us the members, the new concept is professional accountant. They called us both in as a practitioner or as a service member. Both are called the professional accountants. And the current code of ethics is divided into 3 volumes. That is volume 1, the principles based on IESBA's code 2018. And the volume 2 talks of domestic provisions like Companies Act, our own institute, code of ethics, all these things. And the third is only disciplinary cases so far decided by ICAI in the last 60 years or so. Whatever we have decided, all these case laws have been compiled and kept. All the 3 volumes are available in the institute site, which are freely downloadable, and you can download and keep it on your desktop. So let's begin with the volume 1. The volume 1 is again divided into 5 parts. Part 1 is the fundamental principles and the conceptual framework applicable to all professional accountants, whether in service or in practice. And part 2 talks of additional material principles for professional accountants in service. And part 3 talks of additional material principles to the members in practice. And part 4A talks of independence for audit and review engagements. And part 4B talks of independence for assurance engagements. Part 4A and 4B are similar, but they have broken it into 2 components each. First one is audit and review, and the second one is assurance engagements. So the part 1, when we come to the fundamental principles and conceptual framework, see, every member is expected to possess at least 5 fundamental principles. These are called fundamental principles for all of us. That is integrity, objectivity, professional competence and due care, confidentiality, and professional behavior. All these 5 are like, our fundamental principles, like our fundamental rights. We are expected to possess these 5 principles whenever we represent or we behave as a chartered accountant or we represent us. So these 5
Duty is not rights.
Okay, duty are right. I agree with you. So the integrity, it is always, you should be straightforward and honest. And objectivity is not to compromise your professional or business relationships, judgments because of bias or conflict of interest. Professional competence and due care, you are expected to be always familiar and up to date with the professional subjects. Confidentiality, that is, you need to respect the confidentiality of information that you acquire during the course of your professional services. And professional behavior. to comply with all the relevant laws and avoid any conduct that might discredit the profession. That is, you should behave like a professional and not like a non-professional. So a professional accountant who identifies a breach of any of these five objects, you need to five fundamental principles. You need to identify and bridge that gap. The conceptual framework is that circumstances in which a PA operate might create threats to compliance with fundamental principles. Sometimes when you are working on a professional assignment, some of the fundamental principles might get affected because of certain situations that is dealt as a threats. There are five threats which are defined in the code, which are self-interest threat, self-review threat, advocacy threat, familiarity threat, and intimidation threat. The self-interest threat is where you have a financial or other interest with which will inappropriately influence the professional accountant judgment or behavior. Suppose you have directly or indirectly some interest in the client's business, then obviously you will have some self-interest threat. You cannot be unbiased and this thing. That's what the rule and the threat says. Self-review threat is that a threat that a PA will not appropriately evaluate the results of a previous judgment made. Suppose if you are not evaluating the previous judgments in that particular client, then it would amount to self-review threat. Then advocacy threat, the threat that a PA will promote a client employer's position to the point that his objectivity is compromised. That is, if you are compromising with your objectivity, then this threat is called advocacy threat. Then familiarity threat, that's a long association with the client where you may get used to help him or bail him out. That is called familiarity threat. Then intimidation threat, that a threat that a PA will be deterred from acting objectively. Suppose if a client is threatening you with certain problems and you are compromising with that, then that would be an intimidation threat. A circumstance might create more than one threat because sometimes two, three threats also may be there. So you need to be very careful to handle these situations of facing these threats. Evaluating threats, you need to evaluate each threat and you need to see whether any of these threats are hitting your fundamental principles, and see if while addressing those threats, you need to be careful to address them clearly. And in case if you are not able to address those threats, the guidance note, the code of ethics says you should quit from that assignment rather than continuing that. Then considerations for audits, reviews, and other assurance engagements. You should have the independence of professional accountants. That is, you should always be independent, and you should have the independent standards fully applicable to the assignment. And you should have the professional skepticism. Always you should be in a questioning mind, and compliance with the fundamental principles. Always you should see that your fundamental principles, the first five fundamental principles, are always continued and remained intact. So the part 2 talks of the provisions which are applicable to professional accountants in the service, that is employees who are in the members who are in the employment, applying the conceptual framework which is applicable to all of them, whether they are in a big company or a small company. And so here they have discussed what are the nature of various issues that the members in service may come across. The first one is conflict of interest. That is, there should be no conflict of interest when you are working for a company. You should not be a director, or you should not be a, you can be a director, designated director, appropriately appointed, but otherwise you should have no conflict of interest with the client. Preparation and presentation of information. Whenever you are presenting the information of the client or of your employer, it should be fair and clear, and acting with sufficient expertise. You are expected to be an expert, and you should always act as an expert and show your expertise while discharging your functions. Financial interest, compensation, and incentives, all of them are very familiar to us. We are not expected to take any incentive or gift or anything from the employer. Inducements, including gifts and hospitality, this is again a prohibited item. We are not expected to accept any inducements, but one may ask whether if the company is distributing on the occasion of Diwali some sweets, etc., that is okay, but not any special gift for your working in the company, you should not accept. And responding to the NOCLAR, that is, even this non-compliance with other legal requirements is applicable for those members in service. We'll deal with in the next slide. and the pressure to breach the fundamental principles. If there is any breach from your employer to any request from your employer or pressure from your employer to breach some of the fundamental principles, you should resist that and you should not accept that. And this is what called NOCLAR, which has been brought into the Code of Ethics for the first time. Though it has been brought in 2019 when the code was brought in, it has been deferred because of COVID, and it was brought into force from 1/4/10/2022. And unlike the IESBA, here we have brought it in a limited scale only. For the time being, it is applicable to only to the companies which are listed in the stock exchanges and auditors who are auditing the listed entities. What is all about this NOCLAR is that whenever you are coming across a situation where the client or your employer is not complying with certain other legal aspects, you are expected to escalate it to the appropriate authority. This is in a nutshell the context in which it has been brought in. What is the non-compliance with the other legal requirements? That is a big question mark, because suppose if it is like a fraud where management is involved, then you are expected to escalate it to the whom to escalate. Again, a competent authority is like, suppose if the fraud in the presentation of accounts, maybe you need to escalate it to ROC, or if it is a listed company, then to the SEBI or a stock exchanges. And if it is an income tax, some tax evasion, certain things to the income tax authorities. So they have not defined, but they just said you need to escalate it to the competent authorities. You can't simply say that I lose my job and I cannot escalate it to the higher authorities. It is a responsibility on our membership who are either in employment or dealing in the audit if there is a non-compliance. And again, they have said that if it is a routine not connected to the company's financial affairs or these things, like for example, MD's some personal non-compliances with other laws or is getting arrested in some other connection, etc., we need not report. But if it is relating to the company or its finances, or even non-compliance. Suppose if there is a huge case against the company for non-compliance with these environmental rules like pollution control board, etc., which may have an impact on the company's running itself, then definitely we need to escalate it. So if we don't escalate, and if it is proved that we have failed to discharge our duties, then we may be called up saying that you have not performed your duties. This is all about this. For the time being, definitely, I'm sure none of the Vijayawada members will come across this situation unless you are dealing with a very big company where you find a certain breach of rules and compliance with the law.
Recently, there is a case people have encountered. Let us emphasize it.
Yeah. Then this is all about the same thing. That is, matters of clearly inconsequential definitely will not come under this NOCLAR. And personal misconduct, that's what I said. Suppose MD or some chairman behaves differently in their personal life, that will not come here. Yeah, okay. Not only drunk and drive, other things also, several other things. Okay, then PA, that is professional accountant, is required to address NOCLAR only when and if he encounters the same in the course of providing a professional service. That is, after you completed your audit, if you come across certain non-compliances, definitely you are out of this compliance with this. And if something happens after you are completing the audit and that comes to your knowledge, definitely you are not going to be held responsible for that. Then applicable to PAs in public practice, this is the same thing. That so far whatever we discussed, this is all applicable to the members who are in industry or in employment. And this public practice is members who are practicing. Again, the same conceptual framework is applicable for both of us. And conflict of interest, again, when I am rendering a service to one of my clients, I should not have a financial interest with them, particularly borrowing loans from them or taking some kind of advantage. Here and there, we have come across in my career also. We're having some relationship with the clients and then compromising with the values, etc. So let's not get into that kind of a situation. You need to maintain your independence always in all respects. The kind of things that we can quote is borrowing loans either at a lower rate or at a higher rate, whatever it is, even if you borrow at market rate also from a client, definitely your independence will get a suffering. And that is what the conflict of interest. And professional appointments, definitely we need to ensure that our appointment is eligible and fully compliance with all the applicable norms. In fact, our institute also has released a compliance with the KYC norms of ICI, mandatory for all attest functions. It is there in course and on the statute book from 1117. I hope you have seen that. If you have not seen, please have a look at that. And communicating with the previous auditor, we'll deal with it in the next slides in detail. This is a very, very important the clause of one of the part, one of first schedule, communicating with the previous auditor and keeping acknowledgement of communication is very important. We'll deal with in a detail and respond to the proposed new PA. Suppose that is the reverse of that. If you are the outgoing auditor and the incoming auditor writes to you, you need to respond it in timely and with a clear picture. I'll tell you on this also what is our responsibility when responding to the incoming auditor. And you need to review periodically whether to continue with the current assignment or not, with a particular client or not, because it is very important. For some reasons, we keep continuing, though we are not fully comfortable with continuing a client. Maybe if you have not received the last 2 years fees, you may be continuing with the third year just to ensure that we get back our fees. Or if you find certain defects in the financials, even getting out also sometimes may be difficult because we have seen some of the cases how they are continuing with the same defect. So you need to assess once in a way, at least in reasonable times, and see whether it is worth continuing with that kind of a client. Otherwise, you must immediately surrender that if you think it is not worth. Then second opinions, providing a second opinion to an entity who is not your existing client might create a self-interest threat sometimes. Because if you are at liberty to give a second opinion, but sometimes it might create some self-interest that you may be interested in that client and give a liberal interpretation of law or anything. So therefore, one needs to be careful. And if client is not permitting to communicate with the existing or predecessor to determine whether to accept such assignment or not, it is always advisable to communicate with the existing auditor or previous predecessor who has given an opinion. You to check with him whether you can give a second opinion or not. If there are any problems, he would tell you why you should accept or you should not accept that. So if the client is not allowing you to communicate with the previous person, then you need to take a call whether at all such assignment you should accept it or not also. If you blindly go with the client and give the second opinion, that may put you somewhere into some kind of a trouble. Therefore, it is always better to have a word with the one who has already given, if there is one. If there is no one, for the first time it has come to you, at least have a word with the auditor of that company. And then fees and other types of remuneration, you should always protect your independence and scale up fees also, because the institute has given a, though it is not a recommendation, but it is a suggested fees for different activities under different laws. There is a small table which has been given when we were in the council, but some of them may not be following, most of them, because it is neither recommendatory nor mandatory. It is only a suggestive fees. But definitely you should look at your qualification, your time spent, your quality of time spent, senior, junior, etc., while accepting an assignment for the fee and other types of remuneration. Because most of the times we accept for a very less or a low remuneration, and thereafter we start doing some undesirable things. I would not call it the bad things, but sometimes it happens. It might happen to any one of us or some of us, but definitely I think the time has come where you define your scope, you define your fees and collect it mercilessly, because you are not hitting someone who doesn't have a food or anything. You are dealing with a rich person providing professional service. You charge your reasonable fees. It is very difficult to recommend. Let me be very honest to you, because we deal with hundreds of varieties of services. It's very difficult to fix a fees. Unlike a doctor, if you go to a neurologist, he will only provide you neurological services. But we provide top to bottom services. And again, the time, the quality of your senior, junior level, Like senior advocates, they charge hourly crores of rupees. But it's very difficult. Even that suggested model also, when it was introduced in the council, we had a lot of debate. No, that's what very difficult. You go through the council suggested price list. One of my colleague from Bombay tried to put it to level. That is also not. I don't think that is feasible and practicable. So therefore, it is left to you to assess your time spent, your quality of time spent, senior, junior, all those things. Inevitable. You can't define. The institute can't define that. That is why we left it as a suggested guidance.
Like fingers in your hand.
Yeah. So then you should not get into the accepting any gifts or hospitality from the clients where you are performing professional services and custody of client assets. This is another case where at times our members use the client's cars, etc., which is not desirable. Definitely, it goes to hit your independence. And hmm?
It is routinely happening.
Sir, speaking from a public platform, I can't accept or say that our members are doing that. Maybe one in 100 or 200. I am not doing that, honestly, in my last 40 years of service. So let's not get into individual cases. Uh, and then let's come to part 4A, that is independence for audit and review engagements. And whenever you are undertaking any audit or review engagements in terms of our auditing standards, you should always be independent. That is why your audit report format also, if you look, you declare that you are independent of the company and directors, etc. So you should maintain complete independence. And the applying the framework, again, it is a mandatory for all both these kinds of assignments. And we'll discuss about again these things. We'll rush it. Fees, again, it should commensurate with the work and size. And disclosure is required, as I said, the new concept where your fee is more than 40% of the total fee of the firm in 2 successive years from a single client. You need to disclose it to the institute. Originally, when this rule was brought out, it was kept 20%. If you are getting a 20% of your total fee from a single client, you are expected to disclose to the client and say that despite you are paying me 20%, I am still independent of you. This was, in a nutshell, the original requirement. Then that was diluted, and now it is made 40% if it is a private client. And now it is not to the disclosure to the client, but to the institute. So institute probably would assess whether you are still independent of the client or not. So this is what I do not know exactly what the institute is going to do with this data, but current rule requirement is that we need to institute we need to inform. And suppose if your fees remained unpaid for pretty long time, we continue to do generally service, particularly for different companies and other things. They don't pay the fee, but we keep on signing. And one fine day, something happens with the client and you get into trouble. Unnecessarily, you will lose all your fees. Therefore, always collect the fee on time. I mean, don't give any. In fact, the other advocates, the other professionals, our brothers, they collect in advance before the paper goes for typing. They collect the fee in advance. But by the time we complete everything, and even after filing the ROC, also they always delay our fees. But learn to bill the client and collect it also. Because you may ask me whether you are doing the same thing. I am trying to do, but I have learned from many of the members, particularly the urban people, Bombay, Delhi, etc. They keep on a consultation wise, and the moment a client comes and consults and leaves, the next day bill will go to them. Whereas most of us, we it's a all round what is that omnibus fees for a full year for all kinds of consultations. It is one of the even code itself says that you charge the fee as commensurate with your quality and service. Gifts and hospitality compensation and evaluation policies, all these things are there. We know, and we are not expected to enjoy any of the gifts and hospitality from the client. But this doesn't definitely include the Diwali gifts. If anything is coming or anything, don't go home and say that JV has told us not to accept even Diwali gifts. Then the independence for audit and review engagements, actual or threatened litigation.
We can
Yeah. I mean, Diwali, Dasara occasions, not on a regular basis. Right. Financial interest, definitely you should not hold any interest directly or indirectly. Many times, many of our members, they also engage into some kind of a sharing with the client, particularly through wife or children or somewhere, because I have come across cases of that nature. So please do not have, if you wish to do business with him, do it. But come out from the professional angle. That's all I can say. And loans and guarantees, again, this is a of late, it has come down substantially. Earlier, it used to be there. We used to give guarantees to the clients. Our client used to give guarantees to us. Both are prohibited, and we should not have any such arrangements. And business relationships, as I said, we shouldn't have any business relationship. Family and personal relationships, definitely, if your family member is getting married to any client's family member, your interest will get affected, certainly. So therefore, you decide whether you would like to continue the professional relationship with that kind of interest of conflict, or you should get out of that. I'm not telling that you don't have any relationship with the clients, but if it is coming to affect your independence, you must come out of the professional assignment, continue your relationship. Then recent service with an audit client. Suppose if you were in a client with one of you are servicing one of your assessee or client, and you should not join the same client as an employee for certain time. That's about 1 year or 2 years. They have kept a limit. So it's vice versa also. Whenever you are on the board of a company, you should not accept the audit of such company immediately on ceasing to be a director. Both are there. Then employment with an audit client, these are all temporary personal assignments. This is one more area where we lend our staff services to the clients on a personal basis. The code says you shouldn't do that because the same staff may go back to audit the same client, so they will develop interest. Then independence for audit and review engagements, the same thing, a long association of personnel with audit client. They have defined on how many years one of the engagement partner or key audit partner can continue to do the same audit of the same client. Because under the Companies Act, you can continue for 10 long years in two stints of 5 years each. So in such situation also, an engagement partner, if he is continuing for 7 cumulative years, then there should be a cooling period of 5 years. Like that, they have defined for the engagement quality control review, key audit partner, the periods up to which you can continue, irrespective of your firm continuing. In that cooling period, these should not engage into the client's business again. Proprietary concerns, it's not applicable because proprietary concerns, if your client is a proprietary concern, then if it is fairly big, definitely you can look at, and if you are also a proprietor, then where is the question of you are following this guidance? Then that will be a problem. In fact, there are certain problems for the smaller firms where no, they didn't say any exceptions, but they said one, suppose if you are only two member partners, and if you need to keep a EQCR, that is engagement quality control reviewer, you are expected to avail it from your co-professional, my third person, though he is not your partner or you don't have sufficient number of partners to have engagement partner, EQCR, etc. You can engage Sriram or me, someone as EQCR, engagement quality control reviewer, where I do your review of your quality control. So that much is allowed, but not there is no exception for if you are a proprietor and doing for a limited company, of a big limited company, then you need to engage, go to the others and get it reviewed because the auditing standards prescribe that SQC 1, standard on quality control 1. So auditor rotation, yes, there are requirements of rotation. We need to follow this rotation. I'll tell you one classic case on this rotation. Happened to be a good friend of me. It's a fresh case. Just yesterday we had a review. He was the auditor of a company for the last nearly 30 years from 90s. So the new act came in 2014. They have stipulated certain criteria for the companies to go for retirement of rotation. The first one of the criteria was 20 crores of borrowings. First time. Now it has been increased to 50 crores from 2017. So this gentleman continued for audit. He was last appointed in 2014. 5 years, no problem, because the transit period was given under the provisions. So in 19 again he got reappointed. By then the borrowings have gone to 50 crores. So without looking into that, he accepted the appointment, and rather what is acceptance? He continued with the appointment for another 5 more years. So suddenly, all of a sudden, some last year, somebody raised that point that it looks like you have not complied with that. So he rushed to me somewhere in last year, and then I said, looking at the facts given by you, you are not eligible to. In fact, you shouldn't have accepted in 2019 itself, because by then the first transit period is over. So they said, what is the alternative? There is no alternative. At least you quit immediately and come out and go for a rectification or compounding of the last 3 years, 19, 20, 21, 22. 3 years he has signed. If we go for a compounding, ROC may ask, what triggered you? How did you come to know of this mistake or deficiency? Then there is no reason, because I am signing the balance sheet every year with the secured loans showing more than the threshold limit. I don't have any answer for that. But what we suggested is first get out of that situation by resigning, and then if ROC doesn't pick up this, you are lucky. If he picks up, then you have to bear the consequences. If you want to go on your own also, there is a problem. ROC may ask what made you to, and based on that, there is no trigger point or a particular point which came into the light now. So he can say that you are grossly negligent in your this thing and book a disciplinary case. So all these things are happening, particularly for the smaller companies, and where not much compliance is seen in letter and spirit. So the advance or something, first you will get a disciplinary case notice. No, see there what is happening. You have not seen the law. I can say that from the facts of this case, the member who was signing the balance sheet did not look at the applicable law. That's all. There is nothing more. He didn't see. And he went on signing without any check, because the client would have said, see, when there is a you are not.
It's happening.
It's happening. I'm telling you a live story. So he sent me the resignation letter, also copy. So I said, don't show all these things. You just say that I'm resigning from the company. That's all. Not eligible, etc. If you quote, then somebody can ask always. Because nowadays, ROC, you also have an office in Vijayawada. They don't have any paperwork now. They are doing a lot of technical scrutinies and passing orders against the auditors also. So be careful when you are dealing with the Companies Act, and which have a reasonably big. There are capital thresholds also, 10 crores, 50 crores, etc. Private companies. This borrowing limit is 50 crores now, and this doesn't include your guarantees and non-funded limits. Definitely don't worry with that. LC limit or the guarantee limits, etc. It's not included. Then other requirements are there, like for mutual funds or insurance companies, etc. One has to look into the eligibility of the member before he accepts that. These are all the same thing. Provision for non-assurance to an audit client, accounting and bookkeeping service we should not do, because many of the places our members are doing both, and which is prohibited. We should not do. And in fact, I will come down one step. And if you are doing it also, don't show anything on record. If you do it and raise your bill on your junior's name or someone who is an independent person, but don't tell that, yeah, we have also updated the accounts, etc. Our work starts with the financial statements coming to your fold. Till then, we are expected to be only auditors. We are not supposed to even pass or guide them in passing the entries. But
Can't we recommend entry?
You can recommend, but you should not pass. You can recommend entry while doing the audit. You can say pass an entry for this. Certainly, you have a right to recommend, because that's what. But don't pass entries. Don't assume the role of a management. That's what it will come in the next slide. Yes. Administrative services, you can do certain administrative services like filing their GST returns, etc. But again, don't assume the role of the management in doing those services. Valuation services, if it is going to hit your any of the independence requirements, you should not get into valuation, particularly of PIEs, that is public interest entities. These are all taxation services also at times might create trouble for your independence, because suppose if you are rendering a taxation service to a client and you are aware that the liability is certain against the company, as an auditor, you have to make provision for that. So therefore, if you don't provide that liability, then you are compromising your independence. Therefore, particularly when you are dealing with any public interest entities, you are expected to be away from providing these taxation services to the public interest entities. Again, preparation of calculation of deferred tax liabilities, etc., you can oversee. But what the code says is that don't assume the management position while dealing any of these services. So these are again even for audit and review services, internal audit services. We should not do internal audit and statutory audit. In some cases, our members have been doing it. And in this connection, I need to also tell that whenever you are doing the tax audit or any attest function for that matter, you are not expected to do internal audit. Particularly this tax audit and internal audit was in vogue for some time. And when I was in the council, we brought out this rule that whenever you are doing any attest function, you should not do anything which is in the nature of management function.
Internal audit is management.
Internal audit is a management function. So therefore, even for the sake of, if the client requests also, do it on one of your associate, or even internal audit doesn't require a qualified person. So you can do it on your one of your. No, it is required. Any audit. For that limited purpose, internal audit also. I'll deal with that when I come. Cost accountant, when he is not your member, you can still write to them as a matter of courtesy. It is still recommended in our code. Recommendation, that's it.
See, as per management audit, no mandate is there.
No, but our code, clause 8 requires. Clause 8.
Mandatory. So anybody can
Yeah, anybody can be there, but writing to the previous auditor or no, it doesn't say. When we come to that clause, we'll deal with that. Just wait for me. Recruiting services, corporate finance services, all of them you can do, but you shouldn't get into the role of a management. Then management responsibilities. This is again a new concept which says that the firm shall not assume a management responsibility for an audit of a client. That is particularly the small services like word processing services or preparation of your returns, monthly returns or quarterly returns, etc. They are outside the administration. You can provide administrative services, but not administration. That's what the code says. And independence for continuation reports on special purpose financial statements, which includes a restriction clause on distribution. You can always add, if it is intended only for a particular client or a particular thing, you can always add that clause that this is intended only for this purpose and other people cannot rely on this. This is mechanism breach of independence. In case whenever you find any breach of independence in your fundamental principles are doing with these audit and review mechanisms, you should take steps that the independence is restored. And if you think that independence cannot be restored, the guide says that you should quit the assignment. And these are again more or less same thing for assurance engagements other than audit and review also. Whatever we have followed in the audit and review engagements, the same things we need to follow. And now we come to this is all about the first volume talks of international independence rules based on the international ethical standards codes recommends. And now we come to our domestic laws, which is our by and large same. Yes. We've given some leverages here and there, that MOCLAR and other things, where international standards code, it is applicable to all assignments. Now we started with only the high-end assignments. We have to comply with the mandatory accounting and auditing standards, guidance notes, and other documents issued by ICI, and accounting standards and engagement quality control standards, all auditing standards. And we have 3 sets of accounting standards. I think we need to amend this to include the ICDS also. But ICDS will come only when you are performing the tax audit. Otherwise, you may not be dealing with ICDS. Therefore, the 3 standards are: one is IND AS, that is Indian Accounting Standards, which are applicable only for the listed entities and certain bigger entities. And for others notified under the corporate accounting, corporates by the institute, and non-corporates by the institute. Then these are all the routine things, that is standards on auditing. What all we have: review engagements, assurance engagements, related services, and SQC, that is the mother standard like. And members who are deemed to be in practice, our act defines who is deemed to be in practice, and who can render the management and consultancy services. Also, there is a list of services which, as a practicing chartered accountant, you can render. These are all a list. I'll not read out each and every one. It is there in our act also. And all of them mostly management services. But carrying on these things will not give you any disqualification that you are part of the management. Management services you can provide, but you don't become a management. That is what it says. And then certificate of practice, that is only when a member who is holding a certificate of practice can call himself as a chartered accountant. Others, they should only use as a designation. They cannot write the name below his name, the chartered accountant. And directors of companies, political parties, etc., also cannot write the word chartered accountant below their name in those business cards or political cards. If there is an MLA, he can't write on his MLA card that he's also a chartered accountant unless he is holding certificate of practice. So these are all general. No, if he is not holding a COP, he cannot write that he is a chartered accountant. He can keep MLA, ACA, or FCA. That's what. Prefix, SCA you can write. But the words, full words, chartered account denotes that you are holding a certificate of practice. If he doesn't hold, that's what normal. Nobody writes after becoming an MLA. They forget that they are CAs. We had one MLA sometime back, a chartered accountant from our profession, way back in '85. C. Ramachandraya from Kadapa. Later he became MP twice, and now I think he is MLC. In our assembly, he is the only man, at least for these 2 states, to my knowledge. And at the All India level, there are so many chartered accountants who are there, Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha members. Piyush Goyal is there, currently minister. And Vijay Sai Reddy is there from Andhra as a Rajya Sabha member. And Suresh Prabhu was there. Rahman Khan was there. There are at least, in our own knowledge, more than 10 people who reached the highest positions. So, but never we have come across. But the rule says that we'll move to the next one. Disabilities of membership, that is less than 21 years, one will not be given the membership. We have come across some students who have qualified in less than 21, but they were forced to wait till they complete the 21. Unsound mind, undischarged insolvent. All these are disabilities. And name removal from register of members. On death, his name will be removed. On receipt of a request from a member can voluntarily surrender to be out of the membership of the institute and not paying the prescribed fee in time. September 30th is the last date. Those whoever have not paid, please pay that so that your name will continue to be there. And any other disabilities mentioned in section 8, and any order of board of discipline or disciplinary committee directing the institute to remove his name, will automatically his name will be removed. Then membership penalty for falsely claiming. There is anyone who is claiming to be a member is liable for paying a penalty of first conviction 1,000. But I have never come across any cases of this paying this conviction fees, etc., because it requires a long process. The court has to levy that penalty, etc. And the companies not to engage in accountancy profession. There is a section 25 in our own act which prohibits any company to carry on the profession of chartered accountancy. You can't have a chartered company, private limited company, as a chartered accountant firm. But LLP can be floated and can continue the profession, but provided that LLP doesn't have a company as one of its partner, any company. So you should be you can be an LLP forming part of only comprising only individual chartered accountants. Yeah, no HUF or company, etc. Unqualified persons not to sign documents. The name itself indicates that non-CA should not sign. Prior to our UDIN and quoting the membership number, there were cases where some of the non-CAs used to put some number of yours or mine and then went on signing. And it was detected both by the institute and by the department. And there were some cases for booked, etc. In fact, in this part of the state also, we have noticed some non-member signing more than 25 or 30 cases, etc. And maintenance of branch offices. Normally, whenever you are opening a branch, the institute requires that a member should be responsible there as an in charge of that branch. But in case if you are opening in the same city, no need to have in charge, but you need to inform the institute that it is situated within the same city. Exception for branches in the same city or hill areas, that is there. And now we come to the real topic of the misconduct and commissions and omissions and unethical practices. And this is dealt in our Act under Section 22, which says professional or other misconduct shall be deemed to include any act or omission provided in any of the schedules, but nothing in this section shall be construed to limit the powers of the director discipline, which means that apart from the Schedule 1 and Schedule 2 defined violations, if you are into any other kind of misconduct also, the director discipline can initiate action or someone can comply against us and then action will be initiated. That means even if you are behaving differently in your personal life, that can come and hit your professional negligence. So this professional misconduct has been defined in our Schedule 1 and Schedule 2, which both are annexures to the Act. And definitely for those younger members, they will be familiar with them because one question used to be there on auditing standards, auditing paper on this Schedule 1 and 2 non-compliances. And it is dealt in part 1 of first and second schedules for members in practice, and for members in service, part 2 of the first schedule, and members of the institute generally, it is covered in part 3 and part 2 of second schedule. And members of the institute generally, other misconduct is defined in part 4 of the first schedule and part 3 of the second schedule. Now we will rush through clauses. Some of the important clauses I'll spend some time. Others, they're mostly we don't come across any violation in that. The first clause is that if he allows any person to practice in his name as a CA, unless such other person is also a CA, that is, you cannot allow anybody to represent you as a chartered accountant if he is not a CA. It's a simple thing. And we have not come across any cases on this violation of this clause from anyone. Then the second clause is paying or allowing or agreeing to pay or allow directly or indirectly any share or commission to any member other than a member of the institute. That is, we are not expected to share our profit or professional fee with anyone other than a CA. If he is a CA, either as a partner or an employee or a consultant, you are entitled to share. Other than that, you cannot share your fees. Share doesn't include paying salaries. You can pay salaries to a non-CAs, but you cannot pay your share of your profit to the same non-CAs. Suppose if you are retaining a non-CA accountant and say that I'll share 20% of all my professional fees with him for his services, then it is not permitted under the Act. That is, the members can share the fee with members of other bodies as may be approved by the council. That is, there is a multidisciplinary forms mechanism which has been brought into the acts of all the 3 institutes way back in 2006, but it has not got into the ground implementation for various varieties of reasons, because no one else is interested, including our institute also. Heart to heart, many of our members are not interested, and government also has not pushed it for implementation. Therefore, it remained in the Act. So if that rule comes into implementation and if any of our members are getting into the such kind of multidisciplinary partnership firms, then yes, we can pay the fee and share the fee with others. And in some of the states, there is a requirement of payment of a percentage of fee to the Register of Cooperative Societies, etc. Particularly, I think it is there in Maharashtra. That is also permitted. And one third and last exception is that if a partnership firm had some partners and the deed provides to pay some remuneration or fee share with the widow or legal hire of that member on his death, then that is allowed. Though they are not CAs, but for that, two conditions is that the deed should be containing that clause that on the death or retirement of the one of the partner, his successors can be paid only for sharing of the fees, not for continuing in the profession as a partner. That is permitted. So those of you who have partnership firms, and if you wish to include this clause in your deeds, please keep it so that it will help in case of any emergencies to any of the partners. It has not been defined. So maybe for one generation you can continue. It all depends on the magnanimity of the continuing partners. But definitely it doesn't amount to non-compliance with the code of conduct. But suppose on the taxability issue, we don't speak. Suppose if it is above the threshold of below taxable limit, that person has to pay and offer it as a taxable income. So all those things are there. But as far as code of ethics is concerned, it will not be treated as a violation of the code. The third clause is accepting or agreeing to accept any part of the profits of the professional work of a person who is not a member. This is the reverse of the first clause, where if you cannot accept the fee from any other professional or non-professional unless he is also a CA. Then entering into partnership in or outside India with any person other than this is earlier clauses were on sharing or receiving of the fee. This clause is on entering into a partnership. We are not expected to enter into partnership with any other firms or other members. Even the foreign members who are becoming our own members, there are certain restrictions, reciprocal arrangements are there. So one has to be careful to see whether you are entitled to enter into a partnership with that other country member or not. Multidisciplinary partnership firms, once if it comes into force, then it is allowed. And with members of foreign professional bodies, it's generally not permissible, but you need to look at the reciprocal arrangements, what we have entered with the other countries' bodies. And partnership will be confined to the profession of CAs. Two CAs can't join together and run a chit fund business or some other business in the name of chartered accountants. So you should only join together only for continuing the chartered accountancy profession, not other businesses. Then securing through the services of a person who is not an employee of CA or who is not his partner by means which are not open to a chartered accountant. Again, it is prohibited. That is, you should not secure professional services unless he is an employee of your firm. Suppose that exception why they have given, I don't know, but your employee can get you some business, maybe using his own things, but otherwise you are not expected to secure a business through others by advertising or canvassing, etc. Because the institute says, code says that work should follow due to the respect that you command in the market and not through soliciting of work. The next clause is soliciting or professional work either directly or indirectly by circular advertisement, personal communication, interview, etc. No prohibition on securing professional work from another CA in practice. I can go to Mr. Naidu and ask him to give me some work. That is not barred. You can always go to your seniors and ask. That is not barred. And responding to tenders of professional work, in fact, the institute also permits you whenever there is a tender. When inviting members to respond, you can respond. And however, if the fee is prescribed in tender or where the area is open to others, one can respond. If the fee they described, and sometimes they are calling cost accountants also. And if it is, it's definitely mostly the tenders will come only from the government. But irrespective of these small exceptions, you can definitely respond to the tenders. That doesn't amount to soliciting of work. And the classified advertisement in our ICA journal, it is permitted. I have been seeing classified advertisements. I don't know whether anybody is getting the work or not, but it is permitted. And the change in partnership form or phone number, etc., you can release through an advertisement, and some of our members also release it in the newspapers also. But what the code says, it should contain only a reasonable space and a local papers, and you can't put a half-page advertisement in a all over the country, etc. It says reasonable space you can allot. And application for empanelment for allotment of audit, it is permitted, because as we apply for empanelment for bank branch audits, it is permitted. But only thing is, you should not go around the banks and seek work. In some cases, our members have reached the RBI, and RBI, that's the reason why they said we don't want to deal with this allotment of branch work. But somehow we managed to say that RBI, no one will come to you, but be there as a steering body, something like that. Now, actually, RBI doesn't do any work. It is the institute and the Department of Revenue Finance Department. These people are creating the panel, and just RBI will just say, okay, yes, that's all. Actually, now they are out of this picture because of some of the actions, and one member filed a case against RBI for treatment or allotment of branch audits. That is why they got fed up and they said, no, we don't want to be with these things. But huh?
Then with all unfair practice.
Not unfair. See, why we should go and file a case against RBI? RBI is not the one who is allotting. They were preparing or helping and guiding the preparation of panel. See, our members also should know their fundamental rights. They are over, what you call, overactive in the identifying their fundamental rights. See, your client is there. RBI is not your client, first of all. RBI is a regulatory body for banks, and RBI says every bank has a management, let them appoint. There are rules and regulations applicable to the under the Companies Act or under the Nationalized Banks Act, whatever it is. Then publication of books, articles, etc. You can definitely put your name, but there are certain small guidelines on that. Prefixing the CA or his firm name is mentioned, you can mention. But again, you need to see how and what. It doesn't look like a soliciting of work or advertisement. That's all this says. And sponsoring activities, yes, we can sponsor the activities, but not unlike like an insurance companies, etc. We can't sponsor those things. But institute programs, anything is welcome. We can sponsor. But you might have seen some of the big fours sponsoring cricket games, all those things, but they don't put their CA firm name there. They put simply Deloitte or PwC, etc. They have consulting firms. So they book all that expenditure also under the consulting firm company's name.
So we can also follow the route.
If you have a consulting company, definitely you can do that. But not as a Sriram chartered accountant. You can't write the codes. So television, movie credits, all these is all on about the soliciting of work. You cannot make roving inquiries in a TV channel. You can give interviews, but you can't every 2 minutes you can't say when I passed or when I got the rank, etc. You have to confine to the main business rather than talking big about you, and in fact, including making reference to your achievements. Like I did so much of a big case, or I got first rank, etc. It's not supposed to be, but there is no mechanism to do all these things. But there were cases where we have come across when some members gave interviews to the press, etc. They used to advertise, I will be available in so and so Jaipur or Ahmedabad for tax consultancy work, etc. Those things were brought to the notice of the institute, and they were dealt with under the disciplinary mechanism. Publishing of advertisements under box numbers prohibited. You can't publish any advertisement under a box number. And educational videos, you can upload the same in the internet by members, but there should be no reference to the CA firm in which you are associated. You can put your educational videos through YouTube, but you can't write your firm name in that videos. And that's what, no contact details, website address can be given. Then advertising the professional, the earlier class 6 was soliciting the professional work. Now class 7 talks of advertising or professional attainments or services and using any designation or expression other than the CA on your professional documents. If you are a director in a company and you want to use a visiting card for that company as a director, there you should not write the word chartered accountant. On your professional visiting card, you should not write, I am also a director in so and so company. This is the essence of this. And it also gives you on various exceptions and permissions. Like you can have your own website where under what is that pull and push mode, the guidelines are given. All those guidelines need to be followed in a nutshell because it's a lot of do's and don'ts are given. There are here and there exceptions for a general this thing, but it should not be taken for granted that you can advertise in a big way. Like in fact, in your website also, in your homepage, you can't say that established since or in service in so and so year. It can be in a pull mode. That is when you go to the establishment, year of establishment, that should be available. It should not appear on the home screen that, since so and so, all corporates publish that. We are not expected to publish that. Even if you hold a, what is it, quality certificate, not peer review, the quality certificate, ISO or whatever certificates, it should be available in your file on a full mode. You can't say that I am a qualified or quality certificate, etc. So these are all essentially just to say that when someone wants, they can go to that section and download it. ICA, we ourselves are enacted an act of parliament. So here is the question of going for accreditation by others. NAC accreditation is available only for the universities. We are go the university. Okay. And we don't get any grant from any government body, even for projects also. Then now come to the one important clause where earlier used to be many cases on this. This is the clause where accepting a position as an auditor previously held by another CA or a certified auditor who has been issued a certificate under the restricted certificate rules without first communicating with him in writing. This clause talks of whenever you are accepting the assignment or audit function from from a client whose accounts were audited by another chartered accountant or the earlier old regulations auditor. You have to write to him in writing and communicate to him in writing and under the prescribed modes. Earlier, the prescribed modes people used to follow, including certificate of practice, etc. Now, the only certificate of practice is anyway removed. It is a certificate of posting. It is not there in the postal system. So we are expected to write and communicate to him in writing, either personal acknowledgement or by registered post. In fact, the institute also thinking of allowing to send it to the registered email ID through the institute portal. That is not yet become operational, but once if it is coming into operation, probably you are entitled to send it through the official email ID, which goes through the institute portal somewhere like membership portal or something. They wanted to accept that. But this is applicable to all kinds of audits and attest functions, audits particularly, not for the certificates. Audit, if the word contains audit, Sriram, I'm telling you, even it is applicable for internal audit also. Okay. That's what the audit, you see the rule, accepts position as auditor. Auditor includes concurrent auditor, internal auditor, statutory auditor. 1 year gap means?
That was 5 years. 6 year no auditor.
No auditor.
6 year auditor is engaged.
You can always communicate with the last available previous auditor to be, if you want to be very safe. If you want to take the risk and fight out, no problem. You are welcome. I tell you one classic case in one of the city, one of the national bank. Now all banks two such bank called applied and he got the allotment. Sometime he received a disciplinary committee. Only for child acquisition. No, listen to this incident. This is a real story, real exemplar story, whatever you call. So he got the allotment, fulfillment of the requirements of the bank, and bank sent him a assignment letter, appointment letter. He accepted and he conducted the audit, started conducting. One fine day, he got a notice from the disciplinary committee referred by the previous concurrent auditor of that branch. So it was a shock for him. What is this? How is it is applicable? It is allotted by bank, etc., etc. Board of discipline. They found that yes, it was allotted by the bank. No one is saying no about that.
Because concurrent audits continues are result only for chart account.
Only for chartered accountants. Now also forget. Just let me complete this. Yeah. No, but so what? Suppose I didn't appear in the. I was not in the board of discipline. So we tried to convince the committee member. We reached that member saying that it is a waste of time and why are you quarreling with your own brother? You may be in his position tomorrow. Will you really accept this kind of a thing? She said nothing doing. The anchor has cheated me. There is no listen to me when I was there. They assured me all kinds of things, and I did not raise many qualifications. But now they removed me because I was raising the points, something like that. He has some, grudge against the banker. But unfortunately, this member was held guilty despite that it is the public sector bank and the empanelment was called through online, all those things. Still, the Board of Discipline said the rule says that you have to communicate. Why did not you communicate? You admit that you have not communicated. Therefore, it is a violation. Yes, that's what. So, therefore, anyway, if you are not communicating with a previous non-senior auditor, that will you in the institute. He will have no jurisdiction.
Reservation basically. But
So,
now,
it is.
mostly panels are requesting chart account.
Yeah. Yes. That's what our members are now doing. It is a chart society's audit. I have come across two cases where the got the previous audit. They were to sign one report, five reports in the institute. That fellow is a very wise fellow. Unfortunately, he's also known to me. So he asking the new auditor should be. What is this something? Then I said, see, this is the rule position. You have not communicated. So that fellow, so you settle the things. So they spoke to each other, and that fellow's outgoing auditor's grudge is that the client has not paid me the fee for the last 5 years. So therefore, I have no other way except to file. So they settled it. Believe it, our own members both, they settled it for some payment either by the client or by the incoming auditor, what I don't know. And then that fellow withdrew the complaint. So some of our members are resorting to this kind of things also. Definitely.
State Bank of India. Of the meeting meter. మన ఫామ్ గుంటూరు వాళ్ళు సెంట్రల్ స్టాట్యూటరీస్ గుంటూరు వరకు అయిపోయాయి అందరూ లెటరెడ్ ఫర్లు రౌండ్ ఏమన్నారు అక్కడ ఏదో కౌంటర్ పెట్టారు ఏది నువ్వు యాక్సెప్టెన్స్ ఇచ్చాను అది నా బ్రాంచ్ అక్కడికి వెళ్తే కదా ఆయన అక్కడ వెళ్తారు నాకు కౌంటర్ వచ్చింది ఏ బ్రాంచ్ ప్రమోద్ ప్రమోద్ అమర్ సుధీర్ నేను సెంట్రల్ బ్యాంక్ ని హైదరాబాద్ లో విజయవాడలో స్టేట్ బ్యాంక్ ని బ్రాంచ్ స్టాట్యూటరీస్ మీటింగ్ పెట్టుకుని చేసాం ముగ్గురు మూడు.
Actually, so even in the case of branch audits also, you are expected to write to the previous auditor. This is a healthy practice. Mainly, just you should know if there are any problems with the experienced by the previous auditor. See, at least currently, actually, technically, it is only registered post. But in the case of bank branches, even if you send it by email ID, in fact, we have recommended to the RBI and the dealing agencies to furnish the previous auditor's details also to the appointee. And it is coming now. In your appointment letters, you may be seeing the previous auditors for this so-and-so branch. So what I did when I was doing the bank branch audits, now of course I'm not doing because I'm not getting. So I used to send a mail to people say that, please take this as a request and communicate with that. So that way, please ensure that you are communicating with the previous auditor. What happens if you don't communicate with the previous auditor? You don't communicate, then definitely you are violating this clause. Whether anybody is to any laws or not, it is immaterial. You are not complying with the your own institutes. Reprimand or removal name, we don't get into the details. Sir. I know that you are very familiar with this subject. అంటే అదే వస్తుంది ఐ కమ్ బ్యాక్ టు ది complaint can withdraw, whether the institute is bound to accept withdrawal or not అనేది there is a rule. Anytime the rule says, anytime before closure of the complaint, the an applicant or a complainant can withdraw. But there is no rule that the institute has to accept his withdrawal letter. In one case, one public sector bank, I was in the disciplinary committee, one public sector bank having filed against one of the I can use Big Four, a complaint. Exactly. Exactly. So there we did not agree. The bank withdrew the complaint. By then we made some progress and found that the member is wholesale negligent. So we said nothing doing. You may withdraw, you may walk out, but we are proceeding with the complaint. Yeah, it is there. That becomes information case. If you write, if you write just a one-page letter without anything in the proper form, then the institute would say, if the institute will say there is a problem with a fee because we get a fee. Institute will get a fee of 2,500 or 5,000. That is increase in terms. Then you are not filing any complaints, thankfully. 2,500 is right.
Being organized of this, make sure control on the dais. Central statutory act on dais. ముగ్గురు మేము అనుకోవాలి ఒక్కో నుంచి చేసాం పాయింట్ అయితే సేమ్ CGM ఆర్ సార్ దిస్ ఇస్ ఎ బిగ్ బ్యాంక్ పబ్లిక్ సెక్టర్ బ్యాంక్ లార్జెస్ట్ పబ్లిక్ సెక్టర్ ఆర్ యూ అవేర్ ఆర్ నాట్ అని ఆయన
తెలీదు
CM అక్కడ చూస్తున్నాడు కనీసం మీరు మేము ముందు ఆయన రాశారా ఈ సంవత్సరం ఆ ఫోము నేను వాళ్ళ సెంటర్లో నేను బ్రాంచ్ ఒకేసారి వస్తున్నాను థర్డ్ టైం మీరు ముందు ఆయన రాశారా రాశాము మరి మీకు రూలు మాకు రూలా మా అందరు సర్టిఫికేట్ లేకపోతాయి విజయవాడ 300 మంది మీరు చెప్పాలి కదా CGM గారికి.
సో నార్మల్ గా వన్స్ ఈ స్టాట్యుటరీ ఆడిట్ లో ఎవరు కంప్లైంట్ చేయరండి, బట్ దట్ ఈస్ ఎ పెక్యులియర్ కేస్ వేర్ కంకరెంట్ ఆడిటర్, అవుట్ గోయింగ్ కంకరెంట్ ఆడిటర్ complained about the member and the member was held guilty. So bad and with using lot of our good offices, we got him reprimanded, but the fact remains that he was held guilty. It is not the penalty what is imposed.
మీకు ఏం ఉన్నది అబ్జెక్షన్ మేము ఫీజులు పే చేస్తాం కదా, పెండింగ్ ఉండదు. ప్రొఫెషనల్ రీజన్ వాట్ ఈస్ ద ప్రొఫెషనల్? బ్యాంక్ ఆఫ్ మహారాష్ట్ర నాకు TIDA పే చేయాలి, దాదాపు 2 లక్షల రూపాయలు కావాలి ప్రతి నెల మెయిల్ పెడతాం. నెక్స్ట్ ఆయన రాశాడు, ఆయన రాసినాక పెట్టాను నాకు TIDA పెండింగ్, ఫీజు అయితే సెటిల్ అయింది. వెంటనే 24 hours నాకు క్రెడిట్ అయింది. మరి మీ బ్యాంకులో జరిగితే నా తలకు ఊడిపోద్ది కదా.
అదే కాదండి, the reason is why the communication is essential. If there were any problems with that particular client, you will understand. That's where now the amended code says even the outgoing auditor has to truly write the problems. In fact, I know some of the companies where the outgoing auditors did not tell why they are resigning. Because today it has become a preoccupation or a personal reasons and only some of the companies like Baidu and others you might be watching, where they are quoting that the client is not giving the information. Even that is sometimes a reasonable information. So as an incoming auditor, you should know what problems this fellow is facing. In one case, I can tell you where it was a listed company, big company, and one of the multinational firm has done for more than 10 years. They quit silently without making any noise. And a new auditor entered and he continued with the audit because they gave a clean sheet. After 10 years, RBI found that the accounts are fudged. So that was known to the auditor who left the audit, but he didn't sound anything. This is where exactly, if you are honest, as an outgoing auditor also, even if you are leaving or losing a client, but you should be honest to tell what are the problems the client has. That is why this class is very important. And recently, when I was there, we used to see thousands of cases on this. But many of the cases, as Sriram pointed out, we used to hold them guilty and with reprimand, the punishment. But reprimand is not the question of punishment. And whenever the institute asks you, have you ever been held guilty? That's the question they will ask. You have to say yes. It's not reprimand or 1 month removal, 2 months removal. It is guilty or not. So whenever you are accepting any audit assignment, whether it is a proprietary tax audit also, or a partnership firm, or a charitable society, or a cooperative society, any audit for that matter, internal audit, please ensure to write to the previous auditor. Even if it doesn't respond to you, that is also fine. But make sure that you have the evidence of communicating to the him. So that is possible through registered post or get a personal acknowledgement. Don't nothing less than those two things. And the our code now says that what if the other fellow's office is locked or address is changed, etc. For that also the code given a dealing how to overcome that kind of situations. Stock audits, mostly I agree with you, which the word audit is. If you have the bank, as soon as you get the appointment letter, you can ask them, it denotes audit. Please furnish me the previous auditor who has done the same audit, the same client. Nothing wrong in asking, and they should give you. Because in one of the stock audit case, where I was appointed, and it is about 10 years I can share now, no problem. So we went for audit and found that there is a huge gap between the paid creditors and paid stocks and unpaid these things. The banker said, no, no, sir, he is a very highly valuable client. We know that it is all unpaid stocks, but we don't want you to report. So even in fact, that client also happens to be known to me. So then I called his personal auditor. I said, you see, the situation is like this. I don't want to report that they are all paid stocks. So what do you want me to do? Then he said, you better quit so that the bank will appoint somebody else. Bank and client were in collision. I don't want to become a party between them. So I said, okay, fine. I don't want any fees also because it so happened that the client is also known to me. So therefore, I don't want. But so it is more important in the case of stock audits, particularly because many of the stock audits, I know we are not doing a right job. I'm not telling everybody, some of us, some of us. And if anything, something goes wrong with that client account, you will be the first man to be booked because your report only will come, not their inspection reports. You are an external valuer and you will be pulled to answer the thing. So nothing wrong in writing, but I am sure you will get 100% positive answer or no answer from the previous auditor.
యూఎస్ ఆయనకు ఏదైనా అనిపిస్తే ఆయన కూడా వచ్చాడు.
Right.
క్లయింట్ మంచి క్లయింట్ ఆ బ్రాంచ్. నేను ఇన్సిస్ట్ చేశా టాలీ డేటా. ఆయన బ్రాంచ్ మారిపోతాను అంటాడు, బ్యాంక్ అన్నాడు. నువ్వు ఏదైనా చేయలేదు, నువ్వు ఆ ఇన్ఫర్మేషన్ ఇస్తేనే నేను ఉంటాను.
So, see, for your professional judgment, 18 slides. Yeah, I told you. You want me to close? No. 20 minutes. So the clause 8 is very important. Please remember to write to the previous auditor and keep acknowledgement if they don't respond. And one more thing in this is, most of the cases, our members write on September 29th. and sign off the audit on 30th. Don't do that. You must give a reasonable time to the old auditor to communicate back to you. Ensure first its delivery and then wait for a reasonable time. Many of the times the cases used to be that 29th ఈవినింగ్ డేట్ తో రాస్తారు దెన్ 30th వాడి డెలివరీ అవుతుందో లేదో కూడా తెలియదు రిజిస్టర్ పోస్ట్ లో వేసిన సమ్ టైమ్స్ ఇట్ ఈస్ నాట్ ఈవెన్ డెలివర్డ్ టు హిమ్ దెన్ యూ కెనాట్ యాక్సెప్ట్ దట్ సో క్లయింట్ ట్రస్టెడ్ మీ that is not going to help you. 48 hours కాదండి పర్సనల్ గా తెప్పించుకున్నా కూడా he might just acknowledge you but he may not give you the no objection certificate on the same time. No objection అంత ఆశిస్తే పర్వాలేదండి బట్ కాన్సెప్ట్ ఆఫ్ ఎన్ఓసి కాదు అది. యూ షుడ్ డెలివర్, he should respond. Suppose if he doesn't respond within a reasonable time, then you are right. He lost his ground. It is not NOC actually, it is communicating with the previous auditor in a valid mode. So therefore, whenever you are not sure that you get charged, at least with reasonable time, personally follow it until you enter NOC. Otherwise, you have to face the music. సార్ ఇట్లా అగ్రీస్ ఎవ్రీథింగ్ ఈస్ పాసిబుల్. అసలు ఎందుకు మీరు రాసుకోవచ్చు, మీరు నేను చెప్పిన కేసులో టూ అదర్ చేసి తన డబ్బులు తెచ్చుకోగలిగాడు. Both the auditors in this case, we know that we have done a mistake. So we'll pay him whatever we ensure that the client pays him money settlement. So that should not be used. It's a blackmailing technology. Something నేను చెప్తున్నాను కదండి, బట్ దట్ ఈస్ ఆల్సో నాట్ ఎ కరెక్ట్ యాటిట్యూడ్ ఫ్రమ్ అవర్ మెంబర్స్. That's what again I told you. The client is not paying, he has 5 years to 5 years. 5 or 10 is not the question. When your client is not paying, how can you keep quiet for 5 years? Will your doctor give one time? No, you should you give credit. Later on say that. So next clause 9 talks of appointment as an auditor of the company without first ascertaining whether the requirements of old Act section 225 or new Act 140 are whenever there is a first auditor, you are expected to ensure that the company has followed the requirements. You cannot simply accept based on a letter from the company secretary the compliances have been done. You are expected to verify and possess the compliance by the company, like issuing a special notice, circulation of his response, etc. This is another clause where generally in the case of companies, it is applicable only to the company's auditors. Then unjustified removal of auditors, there was a clause that has been done. Removal of auditors is a big process. One has to write to the government of India and all those things. But quietly, people are management and the auditor are coming to understanding. They are resigning on their own. Not much importance. And then charging or accepting to charge based on achievement of certain percentage of profits, etc., which is also prohibited. That is, you cannot take a engagement letter or appointment letter. I'll get you the relief of so much of tax and give me a percentage of that. That is not possible. And production informally you can have in one except the auditor where he has agreed to get certain relief in the tax dispute. It is a they gave an application if you appeal of the చేశాడు then this fellow suddenly realized to court like this, so they find it the case. That's how it is. But even if you enter into that kind of arrangement, don't put it into writing. you have an informed understanding of, say, I should get X amount of fee, etc. Undercutting తీసేశారండి. It is not there. It was there that whenever entering into an area where earlier done by some other auditor, you should not quote anything less than that. And there was an exception for BAFR cases. That requirement is removed. Then engaging in any other business or other than CA, definitely you should not engage in any other business where you need to spend sufficient time. But there are certain exceptions for this. That is director, simpliciter director. That is, you can be an independent director or even a promoted director also, so long as you don't actively participate in the company. And other permissions generally granted are like, coaching classes, taking coaching classes, or working in charitable things, etc. But if you can avoid, family businesses also comes under this. But if you are a karta of a HUF, where you should spell out how much time you are likely to spend on that business, then that is permitted. Otherwise, it amounts to, you need to take the permission of the institute. It won't come under automatic granting. And other than the regulation 198 talks of all those permissions granted generally. The other exceptions are liquidator, trustee, administrator, etc. You can accept that, so long as they are not requiring your full time or substantial time of your professional time. The director, simpliciter, you can even promote a company also. There is no bar. But the moment you hold a substantial interest in that company, or you are deemed to be engaged on a full time as an MD, though you are not designated as an MD, but if you are likely to be doing the business of an MD, then that will require the institute permission. Then clause 12 talks of allowing a person not being a member of the institute in practice to sign the balance sheet, P&L account, etc. This is like a clause 1 where you should not allow anybody else to sign on your behalf, but your office staff can always deal in the routine correspondence like sending bills or seeking information, etc. Any financial statements, you should only sign. And then now we come to part 2 of the first schedule, which talks of the in relation to members of the institute in service. That is again like our applicable to us, members in service. An employee is not supposed to share any of his remuneration to anybody else, that employment taken, or he should also not accept any gratification from anybody like lawyers or doctors, etc., for giving them the assignments, etc. And then the part 3 talks of general misconduct in relation to the members, both in general. One is not being a fellow of the institute, acting as a fellow of the institute. I think in a literal meaning, an associate member cannot describe himself as a fellow member. A non-CA describing himself as a member itself is a punishable offense. Here, an associate member cannot describe himself as a fellow member and does not supply the information called for by any of the institute organs. That is, disciplinary committee, peer review board, or anybody calls for any information. And if you don't supply with that, then also one can be held guilty under this clause. And they are intended to mainly empower the council and the institute to get the information rightfully from the members. Then part 4 is a very important schedule, part of this disciplinary code. That is, one is if a member is held guilty for any civil or criminal code for an offense which is punishable with imprisonment for a term not exceeding 6 months. That is, here it is not the question of you are already punished for 6 months, but here it talks if you are held guilty for an offense which is liable for punishment of 6 months, then automatically you will also be held guilty of professional other misconduct under this.
It is incidental to the profession.
Yeah, it is independent of the profession. It's civil court, criminal court. They don't talk. Exactly. That is what. This is other misconduct, not connected to your professional thing. No, it is there. Suppose you are involved into a murder case, for example. So the offense is punishable with an imprisonment of more than 6 months. After they do that, institute, your parent body also can remove your name because you are offender under the civil so this is an approach when facing charge held guilty under that punishment is for a period of 6 months or less, then you can also be removed. Very rarely, see, for example, the bomb they so next, the important clause is in the opinion of the council, if he brings a disrepute to the profession or the institute as a result of his action, whether or not it related to his professional work. You read this clause because somebody wrote a book on how to make white black into white. So institute took up the case and somebody gave an interview during this period, demonetization period, your black into white. Some sting operation and telecasted the whole thing. Immediately within hours, the institute acted and issued the disciplinary notice. It is when was that demonetization? 2016. 2016 to 23, the case is not finalized. The disciplinary committee finalized and held him guilty. He came before the appellate authority. He started asking, you produce me the original, what is it called, the video content, which was recorded. So before the appellate authority, he is raising n number of grounds. And I cannot simply brush aside. I have natural justice. So it is not finalized. Even I was a party for that. So these are all other misconducts. There are so many other Bombay, whatever, Ibrahim, Dawood Ibrahim was a member. He or his brother, he was a member. But institute will never look into such kind of cases. ఎందుకంటే వాడు ఎక్కడో అసలు ఎన్కౌంటర్ అయిపోయాడు. So అంటే these are there in the rule book. I am only telling you. అసలు వేర్ ఈస్ ద క్వశ్చన్ ఆఫ్ ఇన్స్టిట్యూట్ కమింగ్ టు నో ఆఫ్ ఇట్ అండి. వాడికి ఈ మెంబర్షిప్ ఏం వాడు జైలుకి వెళ్ళిపోతాడు. ఈ ఇన్స్టిట్యూట్ మెంబర్షిప్ ఏం చేసుకుంటాడు? Right. So the last clause is very, very important. Today, 50% of the cases are being booked for this bringing disrepute to the other to the profession. So one has to be very careful. Today, 50% of the cases are coming under this clause. Even the banks, when they file a case against an auditor for his professional negligence, they are using this clause also because he is bringing this profession. He is signing falsely, without verification. So thereby he is bringing disrepute to the profession. So one has to be very careful because it is freely used for any offense, not relating to professional work. In fact, in some he is bringing disrepute to your types of domestic violence. So now we move to second schedule because this is a very important schedule. And the first clause is disclosing information acquired in the course of your professional association, accepting with the approval of your client or as required under the court directions. Other than that, you are not expected to give or share the information of your client. And if a situation comes where whether to give or not, you better consult a legal advisor or give it under a legal advice and with the proper intimation to the client. If a court is asking, then yes, you have to give. But other than that, even if a police officer comes, he will come with a search warrant. Both, any court.
Sure, any court or law.
Any court. And if suppose other regulators like RBI, SEBI, etc., they are asking, you better have a word with the client. Better have a word with the client and then give. Normally, they don't ask us, first of all. But sometimes they ask you. But in all such cases, better communicate with the client. మనిద్దరం మాట్లాడుతున్నాం. You have to give the extent it relates to you, to the client. Like, so sharing, if you can give the information to whoever is asking you, except in the case of a court or a regulator, but provided you reach out to your client and inform me. Otherwise, this person, you have wrongly shared my information. Then number two, certifying or submitting in his name or in the name of his firm a report of an examination of financial statements, unless the examination of such documents was done by you or your partner, etc. That is, without verification, don't sign any statement. This is also very frequently raised complaints against our members, because many a times our members are signing left and right the certificates on capital expenditure incurred or debtors, creditors, etc. And thereafter that is found to be either mistake or not properly verified, and the banks file cases against us. But first, you are the one held responsible. At least in my knowledge, I have seen so many cases from this part of the country. I have come across two cases where the auditors have issued a certificate on capital expenditure incurred and another person on capital brought in by the company. So both were found to be issued under some kind of a negligence, and the accounts have become NPAs, and the CBI did some investigation. And in one case, they used the auditor as their evidence, but simultaneously they have also filed before the institute a professional negligence case against the same person. There they have let him off. They did not call him accused, but they have booked a case under the professional. They said, see, you are professionally negligent, but not a criminal under CRPC. That is the distinction they have given. So the poor member is facing the case. So these are very possible, and don't sign, particularly in those cases. What happens? Everything is in cash. The entire share capital of say 2 crores or something. This all happened some 10-15 years back, but the cases are still running. Both have forgotten. The audit has become fairly senior, and the company lost, bank lost the money, company is nowhere, but the case is continuing. This is the pity that we are facing. So don't sign the certificate just like that unless you have a full evidence. Hmm? అంటే కేసు రిజిస్టర్ అయిన 6 years మనకి ఇది ఉంది, టైం ఉంది. See, if you find it difficult, then the institute can consider and drop the cases beyond 6 years. But it's not a mandatory rule. The huge case అనుకోండి, they will say we will not give up. In whosever period the offense is committed, he you can't escape saying that I'm no more the auditor. That is the easiest way one can take. So the 3 is permits his name or the name of his firm to be used in connection with an estimate of earnings. This is another mistake where many of the members, particularly small places, are committing. Here the issue is that you cannot simply give a certificate of projected profitability or cash flow statements. Our members, with all respects, I can say they will seal and sign without writing anything. You have. No, you cannot do that. Either there is a standard SCA, stands on assurance engagement 3400, where the template also is there. You give that certificate in that format and then sign, because that protects you from possible action. This is also, there are line cases where some members have given their projected profitability statement and they didn't keep any evidence. What was the past last year turnover was say 1 crore. This year the email 5 crores. How is it possible? So all that you need to document. So that's what. That is what SAE 3400 is there, which contains a template also for you ready to use. And in case if you don't want to issue so much of thing, you write one sentence below, the above information or statement has been prepared as per the prepared, use the word prepared or compiled as per the information data provided by the client. Don't give any commitment that it's true and fair or true and correct, etc. And the bankers have sanctioned loans on based on this kind of certificates. Again, I know some of the cases from our state where a member has issued left and right certificates for contractors on the projected profitability. Thereafter, the it became loss and the CBI came into picture and this member lost his certificate. Yeah.
It's a true spot. They are getting it signed by the.
అప్పుడు మీరు చేయలేదు కదండి, మీరు చేయట్లేదు కదా.
Then nowadays bank.
రేపు చేయబడుతున్నాను. Any certificate you will issue it should be issued in. So expressing opinion on financial statements of any business or enterprise in which he or his firm or partner has a substantial interest. Substantial interest means 20% of voting power or share capital if it is a partnership firm. So wherever you have such interest, you, your partner or family members do not do any attest function there. Any other function, internal audit, etc., tax consultancy you can do. Then failing to disclose a material fact known to you, which is not disclosed in the financial, very important clauses in all kinds of fraud cases or management frauds. These 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 5 clauses are liberally used to attack the chartered accountants. So if you fail to disclose the material information which is not disclosed in the financial statement, you will be held guilty. Financial statement includes even a certificate of capital or expenditure, etc. Then 6 again fails to report a material misstatement. The first one talks of fails to disclose information, but here the clause 6 talks any failure to report a material misstatement. If you know that the accounts contain a material misstatement, then you have to disclose. Failure to disclose such material misstatement again makes you guilty. This is a very, very important clause and generally used by everybody. That is, does not exercise due diligence or is grossly negligent in the conduct of his professional duties. One line, the shortest clauses among all our 27 clauses in both the schedules, but 90% of the cases come under this clause. Due diligence or grossly negligent. Gross negligence covers any kind of situation. Even if you are simply negligent, I know your question. If I am only just negligent, then will it attract me? Today, Institute sees everything, any negligence as a gross negligence, with all respects. You can say, sir, one mistake. How can it be a gross negligence? Because it is not defined. So, Institute Disciplinary Committee is viewing all kinds of negligence as a gross negligence. So, don't think that. You do sampling, but if the sampling indicates some mischief or misreporting, then you are expected to do. So long as you justify your action, you can be negligent. See, for example, in case, all 6 members, I was one of the members who heard the case and convicted Satyam case. 6 members name removal and maximum penalty of 5 lakhs. So there the evidences have come in hundreds that there was a clear gross negligence. I mean, there were so many other evidences, it's not the time to discuss. So I can make out from reading of a complaint whether the member is honest and there are only omissions or there are commissions. You can also make out whether the member is really only omitted to do some things which he is required to do or committed something. Yeah. Anybody can go to the text. No, even in the institute, also in the disciplinary committees, we always look at whether this man is really something with knowingly or the institute, the disciplinary committee. But if it is a commission, definitely it will not be tolerated. At the punishment level, probably one may be little lenient, but definitely things are not given for take it for granted. You may ask, how did someone is escaping? That is the general system. So this does not exercise due diligence is a very, very important clause, and we can speak on this for a number of days. So many cases are there on this. So it's only you have to exercise your due diligence and document your work. That is the most important thing, is documenting your work. Unless you document, you cannot prove that you have verified the third party confirmations or the bank balances. Unfortunately, many of our members, they don't keep the documentation. You may get a bank statement from the client's bank account, but you don't have anything written to the banker. So third party confirmations, all of them are very essential, and all this comes only when there is a complaint against you. If there is no complaint, fine, you get along for years together. So gross negligence, there are several instances. I think we'll skip all these things. Now, fails to obtain sufficient information which is necessary for an expression of an opinion. If you don't obtain adequate information to express your opinion also, you have to qualify that. You cannot simply say the client has not furnished the information and issue the report. If you fail to get the information, you have to report it. Then fail to keep monies of your client other than the fee or remuneration. ఇంకో 2-3 ఏళ్ళండి ఇంకా 11 slides ఉన్నాయి. You see how many classes are there, how to skip them. You know everything, therefore you are finding it difficult. So this is a very important section. Nowadays we come across this. But in my tenure in the institute, I'll tell you one case where a client, a retired pensioner, sold a property and he had to pay some capital gains tax. Auditor promptly computed and gave some amount, something around 6 lakhs or 16 lakhs, something, I don't know. So he gave the money to this auditors. It's about 20 years back. Yes. So the auditor didn't pay the full amount. He paid only part amount. And he manipulated that challan to show the full amount and gave a copy to the client. The client is a very intelligent fellow. I think he retired from a bank or so. So looking at that, he found some suspicion. So quietly he went to the bank and then checked up and then found that this fellow has not paid the full amount. So he came back to the auditor and had a fight. So this fellow confessed and paid the balance amount together with interest for the delay in paying. And the client did not leave him there. He filed the case before the institute. So institute took up the matter. So the chartered accountant came before us and tried to explain in many ways. I have first deposited the amount in this account. From here, I kept another account. From there, it came in. He tried to explain. I was the member of the disciplinary committee which heard that case. He couldn't convince us. First of all, fabrication of an challan, it is established fact. There itself, for that, he said, I reworked the capital gains. I tried to save the money to the client. So therefore, I have paid less. Then why did you fabricate it and give the challan? Your intention is very clear. So the intention was found to be abundant that he wanted to do some mischief with that. And at the end of the proceedings, the auditor stood up and said, I am also a rank holder. Then the chairperson in the sitting, he got so much agitated. I said, don't show your face to us. You leave the place immediately. So, with all respects, he is also a member. I'm telling, I don't know in what condition he did and why should he do and bring so much of disrepute to the. In fact, by the time they reached the disciplinary committee, the original complainant passed away. His son entered into the shoes and he came and sat before us. See what kind of impression the society will have, even this one incident. See, I mean, no. If the accused dies, case will be closed, but not when the complainant dies. Complainant died. The chartered accountant continued. So this is one classic case where I felt also very bad that how can our members do? I have also come across another case where a client was giving every year advance tax, etc. This fellow was not paying his taxes. He was showing some wrong challans and wrong IT return acknowledgements. When the client verified, etc., etc., he found that his fellow had not paid. He filed a criminal case, police case, and the man was arrested. I don't know subsequently what happened to that. So this is where the whole profession gets a big bang. To avoid all those things, if any client gives you any money, please keep it in a separate bank account for paying his taxes or for incorporation or anything relating to him. If it is going to be reasonable for a reasonable time, if you have to hold that money. I'm not saying don't accept. You have a separate client's account, maybe in your own firm name, have one more account. You must deposit the money there, spend it from that account and return it. Nobody will question you why, even if you don't return it for some time, for a reasonable time. But if you misuse it, then the whole problem will come. Then part two is general misconduct to the members of the institute, generally contravening any of the provisions of this act or the regulations made or thereunder by the council. If we contravene with any of the information given, then we'll be held responsible for this. And then being an employee of any company, firm, etc., disclosing confidential information acquired. That's the same clause which is there in the other thing. Then including any information or statement which is found to be incorrect and then given to the institute. Defalcates or embezzles monies received in his professional capacity. If you receive any money in your professional capacity and if you defalcate it, then also this clause will come. And the part 3 talks of the same criminal or civil offences, which for a term exceeding 6 months. There in part 1 of the part 4 of the first schedule, it is below 6 months. Here, if you are held guilty for any offence for which the punishment is likely to be punishable for an imprisonment. Not in 2 courts. If the punishable offence is for not more than 6 months, you come up with first schedule. If it is civil or criminal court, both. So now, 2 more slides just to talk about the authorities which are there. There is a first director discipline, which is an independent authority. Institute officer, one of the officer is designated. So all these matters, complaints or information cases will be initiated by the received, if it is a complaint, or initiated by the director of discipline, who is supposed to be an independent officer. But definitely institute council or president will have some influence on him. But he is supposed to be an independent authority. Transfer of him or she not required. No, there were in our own, in my tenure also, only currently the director of discipline is a CA. Sometime back, one lady used to be there. She was a CA. Vandana. So you are so familiar with her. She is retiring next month. But not in the disciplinary director. She is not there in the disciplinary director. She is in the board of board of studies now. So this is the first authority which receives the complaints or raises the information cases and process it and then places before the BOD or DC. What is the BOD? Board of Discipline is the authority constituted under the Act, comprising of one chairperson, generally president, and one elected member of the council, and one government nominee. This BOD consists of only 3 people, and the BOD deals with all offences of first schedule. Any offence or violation with the first schedule falls under BOD, and once the BOD decides a case, it can give any of these punishments, that is reprimanding the member or removing the name of the member from the register up to a maximum period of 3 months. So any first schedule offence, maximum punishment is only 3 months removal or fine of 1 lakh. And then second schedule is under the domain of disciplinary committee. This is the larger committee where generally the president will be the chairperson and two council members will be there from the nominated by the council and two nominees by the government of India. Ministry of Corporate Affairs nominates these two people. And they will come, they need not be chartered accountants, they need not be government serving employees. It could be retired people or many of the retired IAS officers and IPS officers are coming and sitting in this position. No, they come. See, originally this was not the job. Council members as well as for the government nominees. But now I think some sitting fee is paid to the government nominees.
Mandatory.
Yeah. Not for the council members, for the government nominees, they are entitled for 5,000 or so, plus actual travel expenses wherever they travel across the country. Sorry. Under the second schedule, the DC domain, both schedules offences in a particular complaint, one might have committed or violated with the first and second schedule offences. All those things will come under this or only second schedule. And the punishment, once if a member is held under this, is either reprimanding the member or removing the name for the lifetime. Earlier in the first schedule, it was only for 3 months. Here it is lifetime. And also imposing a penalty which may extend up to 5 lakhs. But these are much less when compared to NAFRA fines. NAFRA fines is in terms of number of times of the fee that you have received. But even these 5 lakhs also are imposed in the most deserving cases. In the Satyam case, the auditors and the internal auditor and CFO, all 6 of them were given the mandatory the maximum punishments, both in terms of removal and in terms of monetary penalty also. Of course, it is appealable. Then the next authority will be this appellate authority. And this appellate authority is a common body created in the 2006 Act for all 4 institutes. You may be wondering what is this 4th institute? There is an institute of actuaries, which is also formed under an Act of Parliament. Company secretaries, cost accountants, chartered accountants, and the Institute of Actuaries. It is headed by one retired High Court Justice. The mandatory requirement qualification is either sitting or retired High Court Justice. And the age limit for the chairperson is 65. And the members, 2 members from each of the institute, who should have been ex-council colleagues, ex-council members of the respective institute. And 2 common members for all the 4 bodies from the government nominees. These government nominees again will be mostly from the service members or maybe retired members. But members age limit is 62 for all 4 members. That is 2 government nominees or the respective past council members. So the 62, the moment a member crosses 62, is not eligible for that. It's all of them are appointed by the government, but mostly the respective institutes sends the 2 names from their past council members. This appellate authority has got powers to dispose of all appeals, but there is a peculiar provision here where if a disciplinary committee or board of discipline disposes of a complaint in favor of the member, that is, if a member is not held guilty, then the complainant has no jurisdiction to file this appellate before appellate authority. Only the aggrieved person or the person who was the respondent can file an appeal under the appellate authority. The others have to go to the High Court by way of the writ of appeal, writ petition. So in a way, I was wondering what is this, how can there be a one-sided thing? But the logic explained was that if a member is held guilty, then we should give him an opportunity to appeal. If a member is not held guilty, then let the complainant go to the High Court by way of writ. So with that, it has not. Many times the people who lost their case in the appellate authority, that is in favor of the member, the complainants ask us, what is that? What is the remedy for us? So then we tell them, you go to the High Court. Then after this appellate authority, the aggrieved respondent can go to the High Court and from there to the Supreme Court. And all the authorities, whomever we have dealt, the Board of Directors, Disciplinary Committee, Appellate Authority, or Director Discipline, all have powers of the civil and criminal court in summoning any witnesses or examining the documents.
What's a civil court?
Civil
court.
Civil court powers.
Civil court, not criminal court. 1908.
Civil procedure code. That's what.
No?
Civil procedure,
Criminal.
not criminal. CRP. Criminal.
Only civil procedure.
Civil procedure. So that's all for the time being, because I can speak even for 2 more days. Yeah. There are no restrictions there. No. That's what you can. No, you can become a member of those bodies have been recognized as a part of our profession also. That's why you can't have a business or a partnership with a cost accountant insolvency professional. See, insolvency professional is a part of your activities, but it doesn't mean that you can have a partnership with some other professional. But then you have to come under a multidisciplinary partnership firm. That is not at in force.
Accounting standards. Standard, mandate. Guidance note to recommendatory.
No, guidance note is also mandatory. In terms of authority, accounting standards and auditing standards stand first. Even a guidance note also, it is almost equivalent to the accounting standards.
Fees.
That is not a guidance or even council guidance. It is not even recommended. That's what I think you were not there in the beginning. I gave a presentation. It was a suggestion, and it was squeezed when I was still. I know the background. They make it mandatory. It's all suggested only. It's all suggested only. So, problem ఏంటంటే the cases చాలా ఉన్నాయి. Like ఇందాక నేను చెప్పిన కేసులో అలాగా ఈ సర్టిఫికేట్స్ ఇచ్చిన వాళ్ళు, and some of our members have cheated the government of India. There was a case where the fellow created a fake TDS certificates in those days and opened the bank accounts, got the refund orders, credited them, and the government of India realized after some time. These kind of cases brought so much of bad reputation in the government. It goes to the notice of very high level people, and they start what they say, out of 2 lakhs people. But that brings all disrepute to all of us. And most of the times, we also certify certain statements blindly believing the client, even evidence, witness. And in some cases, it was found that some of the partners were either they have not really signed or they were not in existence. So, what kind of reputation we carry? My appeal is not that the member has signed knowingly. We trust the client. But even motto says you always be vigilant. Even don't believe your own wife. That's all. If in one word, if I have to say. Faith, sir, you are nothing. Your wife someone to certify, seeking your certification. Yeah. Passport certification తెలిసిన దగ్గరికి వెళ్ళానండి, సైన్ చేయమని. నో, ఐ నాట్ సైన్ అన్నాడు. ఎందుకంటే ఐ నో పాస్పోర్ట్ సైనింగ్ ఈస్ వెరీ డేంజరస్. I know you, but I don't know what cases are against you in what court or what police station. He didn't sign me. So you also sign anything. But take proper care.
మనకు ఉన్నాయి ఫాలో అవ్వాలి. మనం ఫాలో అవ్వాలంటే మన ఇంట్రెస్ట్ గురించి వాటికి ఎవరికి చేయి చెప్పాలి. మీడియా వచ్చి
ఉంటుంది కదా నా కోడ్ ఆఫ్ ఎథిక్స్ ప్రకారం we have to write to the previous auditor, for which they have to, banker has to give me the address. He doesn't know that we have that ethics.
చాలా మంది వారికి చేశారు. మన గైడ్లైన్స్ కానీ మన మీద ఉన్న ఎథిక్స్ కానీ యూనియన్ గైడ్లైన్స్ కానీ వాళ్ళ దగ్గర అవైలబుల్ లేదు. దే ఆర్ ఇన్సిస్టింగ్ సింప్లీ ఆల్ సర్టిఫికేట్స్ ఇంక్లూడింగ్ మైలేజ్, కాంట్రాక్టర్ మైలేజ్ ఎన్ని కిలోమీటర్లు రోడ్ వేసాడు అది కూడా సైన్ చేయమని యూనియన్ అడుగుతున్నారు. అది అవసరం చెప్పాలంటే నో సరే ఇది మరి ఆల్రెడీ రెగ్యులేషన్ రెగ్యులేటర్ దగ్గర లేదు కదా మన గైడ్లైన్స్. దీని ఎలా
while the institute is doing its best to make the government and regulatory bodies aware of our requirement. For example, UDIN undanukondi, today every bank knows and every user of our service reasonably familiar with UDIN. అంటే ఇక తెలియదంటే మనం ఏం చేయలేము సార్. అది వీఆర్ ట్రైంగ్ టు ఎడ్యుకేట్ గవర్నమెంట్ కి. వీ హావ్ ఇన్ఫార్మ్ ది గవర్నమెంట్ దట్ ఆల్ అవర్ మెంబర్స్ ఫంక్షన్స్ ఆర్ ట్రాక్డ్ విత్ యూడిన్ నంబర్ అనేది చెప్పాము మనం బ్యాంక్ వాళ్ళకి. కొంతమందికి తెలుసు, ఇప్పుడు బ్యాంకర్స్ అందరికి తెలుసు. ఫర్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ ఆర్ఓసికి తెలుసు, బికాస్ దే డీల్ విత్ అవర్ బ్యాలెన్స్ షీట్స్. తెలిసినా కూడా మనం వీఆర్ స్టిల్ కమిటింగ్. మీరు బ్యాలెన్స్ షీట్స్ స్క్రూటినీ చేయట్లేదని నేను చెప్తాను. లాస్ట్ ఇయర్ మొన్న 22 లిస్టెడ్ కంపెనీ నేను 2 బ్యాలెన్స్ షీట్లు చదివా, ఏదో అవుట్ ఆఫ్ క్యూరియాసిటీ, ఏదో మార్కెట్ లో చూసి. యూ వోంట్ బిలీవ్, ఇట్స్ ఎ లిస్టెడ్ కంపెనీ and this fellow issued CARO 16 report in the CARO 2020. He didn't include several new additions which were made in the rule 11 of auditor rules only, ABC, and those who are familiar with the audit reports, responsibility statements avi levu. CARO 2020 అని పెట్టాడు కానీ కంటెంట్స్ అన్ని CARO 16 ఉన్నాయి. నేను ఉండబట్టలేక ఎవరో జూనియర్ మెంబరు అని ఫోన్ చేస్తే ఈ డజంట్ పిక్ ద కాల్. తర్వాత ఒక 10 రోజులకి వాళ్ళ సీనియర్ పార్ట్నర్ దొరికాడు. ఫర్మ్ ఇదేనే అంటే ఇట్స్ ఎ లైవ్ కేస్ అండి. నేను ఐఎమ్ నాట్ ఎగ్జాజరేటింగ్ ఎనీథింగ్. సో ఆయన కూర్చోబెట్టి చెప్పా, బాబు ఇది ఇట్లా చేశారు మీ వాళ్ళు క్వార్టర్లీ అకౌంట్స్ తో పాటు, అయితే పర్వాలేదు, అక్కడ వీ గివ్ ఓన్లీ లిమిటెడ్ రివ్యూ రిపోర్ట్, దిస్ స్టాట్యుటరీ ఆడిట్ రిపోర్ట్ అండ్ దట్స్ ఎ లిస్టెడ్ కంపెనీ. రేపు పొద్దున సపోజ్ ఇఫ్ సెబీ ఆర్ ఎవరైనా యాక్షన్ తీసుకోవచ్చు కదా. ఇంత బ్లాటెంట్ మిస్టేక్స్ ఎలా చేస్తారంటే, హీ వెంట్ బ్యాక్ అండ్ డిడ్ సంథింగ్, ఈ మేనేజ్ టు ఫైల్ ద ఒరిజినల్ రిపోర్ట్. అండ్ మీరు చెప్పేది ఏంటంటే లెవెల్ ప్లేయింగ్ ఫీల్డ్ లో అందరికి దే ఆర్ నాట్ అవేర్ ఆఫ్ అవర్ రోల్, రెస్పాన్సిబిలిటీస్, ఫంక్షన్స్. అది డెఫినెట్లీ ఇట్స్ ఎ డ్రాబ్యాక్ ఫర్ అస్. బట్ మనం ఎంతమందికి చెప్తాం, మీరు
రూల్స్ ఏం చేశాము
బట్ వాళ్ళు ఎప్పుడు గుర్తు వస్తాయి అంటే వాళ్ళకి అవసరమైనప్పుడు గుర్తు వస్తాయండి. ఇప్పుడు ఆర్బీఐకి తెలియదా, బ్యాంక్స్ కి తెలియదా? ఆర్బీఐ ఇన్స్పెక్షన్ మీద బ్యాంక్ బ్రాంచ్ ఆడిట్ నోటీస్ ఇచ్చిన కేసులు ఉన్నాయి, నోటీస్కి వచ్చినాయి. ఆర్బీఐ ఇన్స్పెక్ట్ చేస్తుందండి కొన్ని పెద్ద బ్రాంచెస్, యాన్యువల్ ఇన్స్పెక్షన్, కమర్షియల్ బ్యాంక్స్ ని. వాళ్ళు రైజ్ చేసిన పాయింట్స్ ని బ్యాంక్ వాళ్ళు సింపుల్ గా మనకి చేశారు. సో ఈ స్టాక్ ఆడిట్స్ లో చాలా ప్రాబ్లమ్స్ ఉన్నాయి. కంకరెంట్ ఆడిట్స్ లో ఎంత కేసెస్ వచ్చినాయండి మనలో అసలు. బ్యాంక్ ప్లస్ ఇప్పుడు హై సెక్యూరిటీ అండి వాళ్ళ సాఫ్ట్వేర్స్ అన్ని, లాగిన్ క్రెడెన్షియల్స్ అన్ని ఎంటర్ అవుతాయి. యూ హ్యావ్ నాట్ వెరిఫైడ్ దిస్ పర్టికులర్ ఏరియా అని వాళ్ళు విత్ ఎవిడెన్స్ చెప్తున్నారు. లాస్ట్ ఇయర్ ఒక బ్యాంక్ లో ఫ్రాడ్ జరిగింది, బ్రాంచ్ లో ఫ్రాడ్ జరిగితే మేనేజ్మెంట్ కే ఇట్ టుక్ ఆల్మోస్ట్ 20 days టు బ్రేక్ దట్ ఫ్రాడ్ అనమాట. వాళ్ళు వచ్చి కూర్చొని చేశారు. ఫస్ట్ నోటీస్ ముందు ఆడిటర్ చేశారు. ఇతనికి ఇచ్చిన స్కోప్ లో అయితే ఎన్ని పాయింట్స్ ఉన్నాయో ఇమీడియట్ గా నాకు కాల్ చేశారు, సార్ ఇదేంటి సార్ బ్యాంక్ నన్ను ఇట్లా అడుగుతుంది అట్లా అడుగుతుంది అంటే, అసలు నువ్వు ఏం చేసావు, ఏం చేయలేదంటే, he hardly visited the branch only. He did not document what is that he has seen, on which dates he has gone. వాళ్ళు ఇచ్చే 20,000కి వర్కౌట్ కాదు. దెన్ డోంట్ యాక్సెప్ట్. ఈ ఇయర్ నాకు జస్ట్ లాస్ట్ మంత్ ఏదో ప్రైవేట్ బ్యాంక్ ఏదో కంకరెంట్ ఆడిట్ ఇస్తామంటే, సరే ఎక్కడ దిల్సుఖ్ నగర్ లేకపోతే ఎక్కడో నాకు ఇంటి నుంచి 25 కిలోమీటర్స్. అండ్ వాళ్ళు దే హ్యావ్ ఎ లాగిన్ సిస్టమ్. ఎవ్రీ డే మై ప్రెజెన్స్ గెట్స్ లాగ్డ్ దేర్. దెన్ ఐ రిఫ్యూజ్డ్. వద్దు బాబు నీకు ఈ ఫీజు వద్దు, ఈ బ్యాంకు వద్దు అని. మీరు చెప్పారు చూడండి, ఫెయిత్ అండ్ ట్రస్ట్ అని. ఫెయిత్ ఉండాలి, బట్ ఫెయిత్ ఈస్ బీయింగ్ మిస్యూజ్డ్. కంకరెంట్ ఆడిట్ లో హైలీ మిస్యూజ్ చేస్తున్నారు. You can't do- అదే కదా మరి. అది చేస్తే మనం ఉన్నాం. ఒక 20 years బ్యాక్ కేసు అండి ఒకటి. మంచి రెప్యూటెడ్ ఆడిటర్స్, ఈ వాజ్ ఎన్ ఎక్స్ బ్యాంకరు. ఆయన ఒక ఆడిట్ చేస్తే కంకరెంట్ ఆడిట్ 3 months చేసింది మేనేజర్. ఇతనికి తెలియకుండా డేటా పుష్డ్ హిమ్ ఫర్ 3 months. 3 months లోపల వాడి పని వాడు చేసేసుకున్నాడు. సో తర్వాత ఇతనేమో కంకరెంట్ ఆడిట్ రిపోర్ట్స్ లో నిల్ అని ఇచ్చేసాడు. ఎనీ అడ్వర్స్ కామెంట్స్ అంటే నిల్ అని ఇచ్చేసాడు. సో 4th month లో సిబిఐ కంప్లైంట్ అన్ని వచ్చేసినాయి. సో ఈయన ఓన్ ఎవిడెన్స్, సపోజ్ ఇఫ్ ద బ్యాంక్ మేనేజర్ హ్యాస్ నాట్ ఫర్నిష్డ్ యూ ద రిలవెంట్ రికార్డ్స్, యూ షుడ్ హ్యావ్ రిటర్న్ మేనేజర్ హ్యాస్ నాట్ ఫర్నిష్డ్ అని. వై డిడ్ యూ గివ్? ఈ లాస్ట్ 6 months నేమ్ రిమూవ్ చేసింది. చాలా కేసెస్ వస్తున్నాయండి బికమింగ్. అండ్ మీకు ఇంకా చెప్తా, అంటే మీకు తెలియదని కాదు, ఒక దీంట్లో ఒక ఇద్దరు ప్రొఫెషనల్స్ ఎవరు హ్యావింగ్ ఏ కంపెనీ. అట్లా మనం బ్రదర్ ఒక ఆయన ఆడిట్ చేస్తున్నాడు. వాళ్ళిద్దరూ ఏదో కొట్లాట పెట్టుకున్నారు. అప్పుడు దాకా అన్ని సంస్కారాలు బాగానే నడిచినాయి. సో కొట్లాట పెట్టుకొని ఒకడు హీ టుక్ ది హెల్ప్ ఆఫ్ అనదర్ ప్రొఫెషనల్ సిఏ అండ్ ఫైల్డ్ ఏ కంప్లైంట్ అగైన్స్ట్ ది ఆడిటర్. దాంట్లో ఏంటంటే అసలు మీకు బిగినింగ్ టు ఎండ్ అన్ని మిస్టేక్స్ ఏనండి. పాపం తెలీదు అతనికి, కార్పొరేట్ ఆడిట్ చేయలే, ఏదో ట్యాక్స్ ఆడిట్లు చేసి ఆయన. మరి కార్పొరేట్ సైన్ చేసేటప్పుడు అదే డైరెక్టరు అప్పటిదాకా అన్ని సంతకాలు పెట్టాడు. తిరిగి మొత్తం అతని మీద వేసేసి ఈజ్ రెస్పాన్సిబుల్ ఫర్ ద హోల్ అంటాడు, ఇంక్లూడింగ్ క్యాష్ ఫ్లో కూడా ఫైల్ చేయలేదు. ఇట్ ఈస్ ఎ డాక్యుమెంట్. అసలు ఫైనాన్షియల్ స్టేట్మెంట్స్ ఇంక్లూడ్స్ క్యాష్ ఫ్లో. డిఫెన్స్ ఎలా తీసుకుంటాము? అస్యూమింగ్ దట్ ది మేనేజ్మెంట్ హ్యాస్ నాట్ గివెన్ మీ క్యాష్ ఫ్లో, then you should have written in your audit report that the financial statements does not include cash flow statement, as the same is not given by the management.
The first question that I raised it, whether there is code of ethics, self-regulation. Is self-regulation taken away by the other authority other than disability?
To some extent, in the case of bigger entities, NAFRA has taken over. On record, NAFRA. In respect of other cases where we are getting into criminal or civil offences, punishable under civil procedure code or criminal procedure code, they are filing it under the respective codes, not under the institute professional negligence. You have to be careful in both things.
కూర్చొని నాన్న మొదలు తాగడు.
పర్లేదు.
ఏపీ ప్రొఫెషనల్ ఫోరం చెప్పు.
On 2nd April, see, we called something else. I'm one real case, and our profession couldn't go arrested. At the 5th, but the 4